This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining Kingston City Land Bank at our monthly board meeting. Today's Monday, July 27th, 2020. My name is Caitlin Armstrong, and I am the Senior Account Clerk for the Kingston City Land Bank and the organizer for our virtual meetings. Before we begin, I would like to go over a few guidelines in order to navigate this meeting as efficiently and respectfully as possible. We ask that all members of the public mute themselves for the length of the meeting, with the exception of the 10 minutes reserved for public comment. As organizer of this meeting, I reserve the right to mute anyone who unmutes themselves. I also reserve the right to pause the meeting and eject anyone acting inappropriately. The board members and staff will be in charge of their own mute buttons. Just a reminder, it's good practice to mute yourself when you are not speaking in order to avoid the interference of background noises and feedback. If a board member wishes to speak, they'll raise their hand and the chairperson will call on them before they speak, stating their name clearly for our audio listeners. All of our meetings are recorded and transcribed. They'll be posted on the City of Kingston's website. Thank you for your patience during this difficult time. I'll now turn the meeting over to our chairman, Daniel Cantor.
Wow, thank you for that epic introduction, Caitlin. Welcome. I'm calling this meeting to order at 6:35 p.m. Great to see everybody. We have a fair amount to get through, so let's get to it. Normally our agenda is a little bit funny, so we have 4 expected votes tonight. I'm going to do them like along with the committees that they kind of go with. So normally at the top we do a public comment period, 10 minutes. We try to keep it around 2 minutes a speaker if possible. Looks like there's only two of you plus Arlene. So if you guys would like to speak now, you're more than welcome to reach out to us on email or through our website. Floor is yours.
So now is the public speaking?
Yeah.
Cool. First question is there anything else going on with the rest of the houses besides the ones that you bought?
Yes. So it might make sense for me to save this more for chair announcements, but basically we are running additional titles, including Rodney Street, and we'll have more information about those soon, basically.
Sweet, good to hear. And the other question was the work being done on the houses that were purchased, right? There's going to be some renovation work. Are those projects, is that going out to bid, or is that already decided on who's doing it?
No, so we are, I'll also cover this, but we are in the process of just getting the scopes finalized, and are aiming to have RFPs out by the end of the week so we can start bidding out the work.
Sweet, thanks. That's all my questions.
Cool. Kevin, nice to see you.
Sorry about that. I had to start over again. I'm Kevin. I recently moved to Kingston and wanted to learn more about the land bank.
Welcome to Kingston. Good to have you. Serena, we can see that you're here, but we can't see you. I don't know if that's on purpose, but just so you know. All right. So it was a busy month, ups and downs. So kind of a few significant things happened. We did speak to the Novo Foundation late last week, kind of catching them up on the events of the last year and a half and discussing future funding. We'll be speaking to them again soon. Do we have something, Mike, this week? Not yet, but we will. In the meantime, they have agreed to one of our requests, which was to unrestrict about $275,000 from grant funds that were to go to the Franklin Street office renovation, which is no longer happening, so that we can use that money to buy down acquisitions from the city. So that's very good news. We spoke at the officer level. We've been doing calls every 2 weeks with Bartek, Omari, Alana, and myself, and talked about strategic planning and kind of how to move forward on that. So I think where we sort of landed on that conversation is that it would be best for the board to get together and do a couple of kind of strategic sessions to kind of really clarify our goals, our expected deliverables, and our hopeful outcomes. So a couple of reasons. Number one, just so we all know what we're doing. Number two, I think it will help sort of clarify the goals between committees, which right now has been a little bit, I think everyone's doing a great job, but there's not a ton of inter-committee communication, I think, that could be improved. And the third major thing, which leads into this other discussion a little bit, is using it as a way to fundraise around. It's really hard to speak to funders and the public and any interested parties about what we're doing when we don't really have like a unified set of visions for our work forward. So I think everyone's pretty much on the same page, but it's really just about clarifying it and getting it in a document that we can reference and inform decisions off of. If that all makes sense. So I think it's a little bit premature right now, but it's, you know, really typical for nonprofit boards to have a fundraising committee. We should likely have one fairly soon. I think what will come after the strategic planning initiative, but you know, we essentially have two sources of funding right now, one private and one through the state, and we should really diversify that to enable our work to last longer. So we had, Mike and I have been working hard on scoping the houses. We were hoping to have a consultant on board to do that part, but unfortunately they quit the day they were hired. So I do this work for a living. I can write a scope. Now it's done. So we can get these RFPs out so we can start bidding the work. We are continuing to look for some kind of project manager, owner's rep type of person who can help manage some of the day-to-day construction needs and take down contractors with their insurance needs and things like that. So if anyone knows anyone, interesting part-time job possibly. Beyond that, I think pretty much everything Mike has more information on and will be covered in committee reports. So with that, if I can turn it over to Mike.
Sure. Great. Thank you very much. So I will expand a little bit on some of the things Daniel talked about and kind of boil it down into categories of development updates. So we've started to refer to the series of properties that we're working with by phases. So phase one is the first 3 properties that we currently own and control and acquired from the city earlier this month. So on those homes, landscaping is underway, completed at least until the grass grows back. We have landscaping contracts in place. The cleanouts similarly have also been completed on the homes. There's a little bit of refuse here and there. Major things have been removed. As Daniel mentioned, the scoping is completed and the RFP work is imminent. So watch this space, those of you from the public on this call, both on our mailing list and on our website, and possibly through as many avenues as we can to try to let people know that the work is going out for bid. Phase 2 of the work that we're considering is an additional 5 properties mentioned. So we began environmental investigation, so phase 1 work, and also the title reports, which obviously we have to know that what we're buying has clean title. Those take several weeks to get back, and I assume by the time of the next board meeting, if not before, we'd be in a good position to bring this through acquisition disposition and talk about kind of what our thoughts are for those 5. Phase 3 would also be 5 properties, and we've identified those 5, but we're waiting to see what happens on the Phase 2 properties, but we do have properties behind those that we're also considering. On the partnership side, there's a possible partnership with a local developer, being Rupco, that Daniel and I and our attorney, the land bank's attorney, have been hard at work on negotiating. It's a little early to try to articulate what those details might look like, but in essence, this would potentially allow us to capture that portion of our work that involves affordable housing. We don't currently have that capacity, and by working with the developer in some way, shape, or form to possibly help us with the construction activities, but definitely to work with us on the sales and marketing piece, we might have a pretty effective and efficient way of getting that done. So that's in early stages. The next meeting is tomorrow. That's my update on that. In terms of the other partnership aspect of our work is obviously with the city. And we have been working again with general counsel and participation by the city to try to come up with a framework for all in-rem properties that come through the city of Kingston. That's also in the early stages, and more to come on that framework, but we're working on a couple different ways that obviously you'd learn more about as we do, but it would be just a couple different strategic partnership initiatives that we think are very exciting, and that's one of the things we've been working on this month. On the funding update side, Daniel mentioned the wonderful news about Novo Foundation unlocking a portion of funding to help us with acquisition costs. I would also like to mention that Caitlin has been working very, very hard with Enterprise to get our Enterprise grant funding unlocked. And so this week, we will make our first application for funding from Enterprise. This is reimbursement for funds we've already expended. I think, Caitlin, it totals about $165,000. And that's kudos to you. That's amazing. And that will really help us to continue to spend our money on the right things and get reimbursements under that grant and to get the grant moving as well. The other updates I have are on the county. I'd like to report that I have nothing to report. Hi, Serena. On the county itself, I've had, as your board members are all aware, I've had bi-weekly phone calls scheduled with the county to talk about what might be a framework for potentially discussing with you an expansion of the KCLB to the county level. Those conversations have been pretty slow, and I have no updates on that. The other thing that I would update in the other category, it's big news to Caitlin and I. It's nice just to give you the update. The office is done. So in a modest way, we have an office now. Construction is complete. The used furniture shows up this week, and we will be working out of there definitely on Wednesdays, obviously on an as-needed basis. For members of the general public, this is not a publicly accessible space. We're not prepared to comply or in a position to kind of respond to the needs of the COVID crisis. So it's a very small little office with 2 desks in it. It's in the Midtown Center, but that's where we'll be working privately. So those are my updates. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer anything, but thanks.
Cool. All right. So if we can move to committee reports, I think we're there. So I'm just gonna remind us that we have to vote on some stuff. But if we can start with Omari for finance.
Sorry, 1 second.
Do you want me to rearrange? I'll rearrange. Agnieszka, you want to do governance?
I have to unmute myself. Okay, so we actually had a very efficient meeting on July 9th with Brian Sue. I think that's how you say his name, I'm not sure, our lawyer, to go over, we really didn't have much of an agenda, and what our lawyer and Michael have been working on is to just get each of the committees to have a charter of their own, So that's really what we spent the meeting doing, mostly to go over the governance committee charter. And out of that, we also sent the charters for each committee to the prospective, their respective chairs. And we hope to, at this meeting, I don't know what the procedure is going to be for this, to get these charters okayed by everyone on the board so that each committee will have a proper charter. Mostly what we discussed for each committee is the responsibilities of the people on the committees and how each committee functions with respect to the board and each committee serves at the pleasure of the board. So that's generally what we discussed, and Michael and I have followed up by sending the charters to each committee chair, and hopefully we can get that those charters approved tonight. That's it from me.
On that note, so we have now 3 pieces of housekeeping because I screwed up one. So I rearranged the agenda and skipped right past approving last month's minutes. So we should probably take care of that. If we can, I've been told that it's easier to deal with voting person by person versus everyone screaming into their Zoom. So if we could try that for this as a test run. So on the agenda, I'm just gonna run down that. So unmute yourselves, I guess. Motion to approve June 22nd board meeting minutes.
I'll make the motion. I'll make the motion.
I second.
Okay. Steve, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye. Alana? Bartek?
Aye.
Omari?
Aye.
Aneshka?
Aye.
Karen is missing. Bob?
Aye.
And Serena. We'll call that an aye. There is a way. Okay. Meeting minutes approved. Awesome job, everybody. So you may recall back in May, we amended the bylaws because of scheduling stuff. We didn't have the required 30 days to pass them in June. So now we're in July and we can pass our amended bylaws. They are in the board package. Basically, they had to do with attendance and virtual meetings, essentially. Does anybody need time to look over those again, or can we vote? I'm gonna say let's vote. So I move to approve the amended bylaws.
I second that.
All right, same deal. Steve, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye. Ilana? Bartek?
Aye.
Omari?
Aye.
Aneshka?
Aye.
Karen is absent. Bob?
Aye.
And Serena. Serena?
Aye.
Serena?
Yeah, you just started to break up a little bit.
Oh, you're here. Sorry, I thought you were being very still. Okay. Passes unanimously, except for Karen is absent. Great. Okay, and then if we can approve these committee charters, also in the agenda, all of the committee chairs had a chance to review them 2 weeks ago, last week, and they were sent out in the agenda last week. We haven't heard anything, so hopefully everyone's fine with them. But this is basically our legal housekeeping that really should have been done quite a while ago. Mike, do you know if do I have to do them separately, or can we just approve all of them?
I think you can approve them all at once.
Okay. So I would like to move to approve the committee charters for the Finance Audit Committee, the Governance Committee, the Acquisition and Disposition Committee, and the Communications and Community Engagement Committee.
I can move those.
I'll second.
Okay. Steve Noble, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye. Alana?
Aye.
Bartek?
Aye.
Omari?
Aye.
Neshka?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
And Serena?
Aye.
Great. Okay. All right. Omari, do you want to do the Finance Committee report?
Yeah. So this past month, June, was probably the busiest month in terms of spending that we've had to date. And so I think that's a good thing. It means that we're doing a lot of work. So I'm going to commend the staff on all the things that did happen, which included a lot of removal of trees from different properties, and moving into the office space, and it looks really nice now. The fresh coat of paint. You know, paying the city for staff salaries, as well as a number of smaller administrative costs. So since we are now moving kind of at a quicker clip, during the Finance Committee meeting, we spoke with Mandy about creating like a budget to actuals report moving forward, so we can really understand where we are, you know, throughout the year with regards to the budget. So that's going to be happening shortly, and you know, we'll be getting down to the, you know, per house kind of level of detail. So that's kind of where we are now. I know there was a note in the agenda about the budget needing to be complete for next year by October 1st. And that coincides with the city's timeline for having their budget, for Steve having his budget ready to be approved. So we'll be working on that over the next few months to make sure that we're in compliance, as well as it relates to our reporting to the state. So it looks like everything's on track for that. I think that's about it. Anything else that you'd add, Michael or Mandy? Okay, great.
Cool, thank you. Acquisition, disposition, our lawyer, Brian, went through the disposition policy with a fine-tooth comb and kind of fixed various just sort of legal things like capitalizing things that I thought, and identifying areas where we were in sort of not great legal position for getting potentially sued down the line. So we basically went over that at our committee meeting and provided a few edits to Brian, which were fine. And so it's moved out of committee and was included in the board package. So hopefully everybody saw it. It's not radically different than the one that we passed in January, December, but it's much cleaner and legal, which is nice. So if we can, I would like to get that up on the website ASAP so that we're not misleading with things that no longer exist in our policy. So if I can move to approve.
Yeah, I just have a question, Dan. I'm wondering if maybe I noticed that some of the programs that were previously in there were completely removed, like the residential preference program. And so can you or someone from the committee just kind of describe the thought process there?
Yeah, so basically those things were removed because we think that we can do the same thing essentially without getting into, so like that program specifically, I think sounded good in theory, but we could never really figure out how to make it factor into the decision when weighed against everything else. So like if there's a residential preference, but then the proposal is lousy and there's somebody from outside the area who like has all of their ducks in a row, how do we make that choice? And I don't think anybody had a great answer to it. Bob is also about to jump out of his chair, so.
Well, no, I just want to point out to you, Bart, that the specifics, when we had those programs in there that were very specific and very constraining, it eliminates our ability to make decisions that are going to be supportive of our mission. And it also opens us up to the potential for legal liability in some of the programs that we had in the original one could be described as discriminatory, and we didn't want to open that legal door for people to come after us. So leaving it to the discretion of the board for each individual decision gives us a lot more flexibility and gives us a lot more opportunity to do what we want to do and consistent with our policies that we're also publishing. Does that make sense? Does that help at all?
Yeah, I think I agree. I completely agree, and I don't disagree with the removal of the programs. It's just that the optics of, removal of the resident preference program isn't great. If you just look at it in the surface. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And, it was a decision that we talked a lot about, but I think for reasons that Bob brought up and what I said earlier about just how it works in practice, I think it makes the most sense to eliminate it. I mean, there are other things in the policy that point toward, obviously, we're here to serve Kingston and Kingston residents. I trust that the spirit of our board will maintain that, so that's that.
Sounds great.
Just one last thought. We also specifically say that in our policies, in our policy statement, that we're here to serve the residents of Kingston, and so that's where we point to, I would think, if people have a problem with the disposition policy. But
yeah. Steve?
One, I just want to, as a board member, it was really great to be able to have a document that also had like those track changes so that we could actually see the changes that you made. And so I know that's a little bit extra effort, but I think it's really helpful to us and the public to be able to see, what was updated. And so I just want to thank whoever did that. So that was good. And if you need a motion, I'd be also happy to move it forward too, if you are looking for a motion.
I am. I don't know whether to thank Mike, Caitlin, or Brian for that wizard degree emailing, but thank you to you all. Steve, you would like to make a motion? Can I second the motion? Okay. Our favorite game. So we are moving to approve the amended disposition policy. Steve Noble, how do you vote?
Yes.
Aye. Alana?
Aye.
Bartek?
Aye.
Omari?
Aye.
Anushka?
Aye.
Karen is absent. Bob?
Aye.
And Serena?
Aye.
The motion passes. Terrific. Okay. Alana or Bob, did I miss anything about our meetings? Also on the acquisition front, I know Mike mentioned this, but so we had 2 properties that we had in phase 1, had pretty significant title issues. This is a learning experience for everyone, including the city side. So we're working on clearing some of that up. I believe it's been cleared up for one of them. However, we are keeping it in play as we're trying to sort through our funding needs because it's a pretty significant project. So we have 5 undergoing title search right now. James, I know you joined late, but included in that are the 1 property on Hasbrook and the 2 on Grand. So there's 3 adjacent properties right there. So we'll see what happens with those 5. We have 5 more lined up behind that. We are kind of moving as fast but responsibly as we can. As those titles come in and are hopefully clear, we can make informed decisions about the path forward. But we kind of got to know what we're getting into before we just start signing checks. So I think that's kind of it for acquisitions. Bartek, do you want to do the communications report?
Right. So the main issue at hand right now for the communications committee is to set a framework by which we will conduct community outreach around properties once we've acquired them and once we move into the phase for construction. Currently, the plan is to do a tabling event in front of each property. This would be outside and obviously socially distanced. So we're looking at a few date options during a Saturday in September. We would probably do all 3 properties that are currently acquired in one day. And, it would be 1 hour in front of each property to answer any questions that the neighbors might have, informally ask for input, and just provide more information about what is happening in front of each property. Let's see if there's anything else I want to say around that. And, obviously our goal is also to be prepared to answer questions from individuals that might want to purchase the property as well, given that we'll need to do some outreach around the presence beforehand. The other item is that we are working with Rebecca, our designer, on finalizing the signage, and I believe that's done or in process. Caitlin's nodding her head. And also the infographic, which Caitlin shared earlier today. This would be a kind of a 1-pager infographic about the land bank. That is it for comms, unless anyone wants to add anything.
For the events outside of the properties, are you envisioning this as like an information session or?
No, kind of just a walk up,
Okay.
you know. Yeah, there's no structured agenda.
So one of the, I guess it's more question, comment, maybe. One of the things that I know that with these kind of first 3 houses that we're doing, these are part of kind of the batch of houses where we may and are obviously going to be doing the renovation work ourselves. And so we're going to be having contractors potentially on site, and, we may be, this may be a different model than some of the future houses. And so I wonder, did your committee kind of talk about how, for the ones that we're actually doing the construction ourselves, it may be good to do these tabling to kind of introduce, where then other houses, when, we may be partnering with a nonprofit where we may be actually just transferring the property directly to them, or maybe selling the property directly, that there may actually not be a need to table or to, for those, because those are really kind of just transactional compared to kind of us on the ground. And so I wondered if this was kind of just a plan for these first 3 or any other ones that we actually renovate. So I guess that was kind of my question.
Yeah, I can answer that, and maybe, or Alana, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'll go after you.
Yeah, I mean, I see these first 3 properties as really a test to see what works in terms of, outreach and getting input from the community. But I do also think it is a responsibility to establish that kind of framework. Alana, if you don't mind muting your mic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was also saying, I think it is, our responsibility to see, what works and establish some means by which we get feedback from immediate neighbors.
I guess my question is, like, in getting feedback, I guess, like, what type of like, if we're already under construction, how do we take that feedback and what do we do with it? Is my question. Like, I don't want to get into a position where it looks like we're taking suggestions, but then we don't actually do anything with the suggestion. Like, I don't know.
We had that conversation. I think we're not. This was much more. I do not believe that we ended these conversations saying that it was mostly about feedback. I think it was really more informational and just about building relationships in the community. I think there was that conversation sort of about, well, surveys and things like that. We were like, no, that's a bad idea. If we're not able to actually, if there's certain places where their feedback is not requested or is not going to be able to be followed, then we shouldn't ask for it, because that's disingenuous and will piss people off. So that's fair. I think it really was much more about providing information. We talked about, this was something that happened last year or I don't know when, 100 years ago, 2 days ago, when we met with RUPCO about, being able to provide support for people who are trying to, gain financial assistance, or all the different ways that the resources that are out there for people who are interested in properties but might need help affording them. So it's sort of like letting people know the land bank is here, we're in the community, this is what's happening with the properties, not specific feedback about that property. And so I would agree with Bartek. We didn't actually explicitly address the difference between properties that we are doing construction on or not, but I would prefer as a member, so we didn't make a decision, but as a member of the committee, I would say I would prefer that we do outreach, we do some kind of open house at every property, just to maintain consistency. And so people feel like we're upfront and honest and out there in the community, which is what part of our work should be.
Yeah, may I say something? I actually really, one of the best things we did last year was go out into the community and actually speak to people about what's happening in their neighborhoods. And I think that we should, I agree with Alana, we should always be, have some kind of an information session for each land bank property. I know that's cumbersome and difficult, but that's what we're here to do, and to connect with the people whose neighborhood we're affecting.
And maybe, Aneshka, if I could just try to understand a little more where everyone head's at on that. If the land bank is acquiring, vacant land or commercial properties or things that, how does that, just so I understand what the vision is for this in terms of how we may be evolving in the future? How do you see?
I think just to answer that out of my own sort of, dedication to this cause, I think that we should be very transparent, and often the only way to do that is to be at a property and to offer a public meeting like this. People very rarely will come to the city hall to these kinds of meetings. To be in the fabric of the community. Now, if there's a piece of vacant land, we of course, I think we need to ask the neighborhood, do you want a playground here? Do you want a, what would you like to happen to this piece of vacant land? I don't think that's up to the board to just decide what happens to that piece of land. I think it is our role as a kind of I don't know, it's kind of like a community organization. That's how I see us. And to build community, there's so, in many areas there is very little community, especially when there's distressed homes. So I just think it's that part of that sort of effort to make sure that people understand who we are and what we're doing.
So, thank you. I'm cutting someone else off. I can't look at everyone. Sorry, Daniel. I cut you off.
I was just gonna say, I think there's a middle ground here. Like, I hear what you're saying. I think where that becomes an issue is, for instance, vacant land. We can't offer them a playground because we can't build a playground. They can't build a playground, and Parks and Rec can't build a playground. So, I think leaving it. I think the better strategy is for us to say, and the playground is sort of a funny example, but for instance, when we did do community surveys, one of the things that came out of that that I remember was a lot of people basically saying, no, we don't want affordable housing there. And I think most of that comes from not really understanding what we're talking about when we're talking about affordable housing, and so I don't want to leave it up to potentially classist, potentially racist neighbors to say we don't want this type of person in our neighborhood. So I think we have to be really, really careful about the way that we approach feedback, and I want to make sure that we're not leaving it open-ended to the point that we're just ignoring it because it's bad.
Could I make a suggestion that maybe to add to that? I think it might be super helpful if everyone on the board was in agreement with what the communication to the public not only would be, but what, if any, negotiating discussions, what are you asking the public in general? Are you asking them for feedback on the color of the house, or are we talking about a platform to redevelop a vacant parcel of land, or are we just sharing information about the first 3 homes? Or are we asking for their feedback on the next 10 homes? I think it's really important for everybody to know what we're saying externally before it happens. So it's really helpful to know that we're engaging with the public, but I think no one being surprised by what is being said publicly by members of the land bank out to the public, I think would help us all to be on the same page. It goes to the strategic planning, like everything, just so we're all singing from the same song sheet.
I think that's a good idea, Michael. I think, in my eyes, the getting feedback from the community can be useful in identifying which proposal to go with. If we're, asking for proposals for a piece of vacant land, we can provide that information that a developer might otherwise not receive because they might not have the time to, go around to neighbors and ask them, or the expertise to do that. So I think that is how it could be useful. It doesn't mean we're committing to anything, but we're just saying, we're here as this kind of intermediary to, try to do more than just sell houses, right? So that's the role that we're going to play. I think if we can be really clear about that, then I think it'll be fine.
So on that note, I think going back to the beginning, like I do want to hold these strategic planning sessions. I hope for good engagement from the board, but I really think that will help clarify this conversation, and we'll have a better path forward that way. Because I think we're sort of speaking in abstracts, and Omari is right. Like, as we're considering proposals, we should know what the neighborhood is interested in. So yeah, so I think Mike or Caitlin is going to send out a doodle, everyone's favorite game, and we'll try to get this on the books. It does have to follow the public meeting rules, assuming there's a quorum, but we'll just go into executive session. And I would expect it to last probably like 2 to 3 hours. So let's figure that out offline. Yeah. Does that sound good, Mike? Doable?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Bartek was there.
No, I mean, so we'll continue to plan this obviously for September. But to Mike's point, we'll use the next committee meeting to also carefully kind of frame out the questions we're asking, if any, during these sessions, and get on the same page in terms of talking points, especially as it relates to the future of these 3 properties.
Cool. Sounds great. I have no updates on the design committee, both because it's been a busy month, but also because we're in talks with development partners. I'm not clear what the scope is going to be for said committee, so I don't want to start like recruiting people and assigning work if like there's nothing that we end up actually really having to do. So I'm putting a pin in that. Hopefully next month I'll know more. Yeah, we had mentioned, I think at the last few board meetings, that we're talking to a group called the Kingston Design Show House to partner on one of the properties. They're still very interested. We've still been talking to them. We are trying to iron all of that out just to make sure that everyone's liabilities are covered and all of that. But I still think it could be really cool. Maybe something that could happen, kind of year after year, but we're trying to get it done. Everyone's doing their best. We're at new business. Mike's gonna send out a doodle poll. COVID's still a problem. What else? Anyone have anything to add? Mike, new business?
Not at this time.
All right. Then if there's nothing else, I will move to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Do we do the roll call for this too, Mike?
Why not? Why not?
How do you vote?
I vote to also.
Good.
Bartek, Omari, Anoushka, Bob, Serena.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Good to see you all. Stay safe.
Have a good night, everybody.
Have a good night.
Bye all.
Have a great week. Bye.
Bye.